In my world there is music and good vibes and laughter and lovers, adventure and friendship. We know who we are.
Welcome to Be the Wellness Podcast, where we help you master your body, mind, and the experience of life through insightful conversation, interviews with experts and thought leaders, all with a side of marital banter and some good old-fashioned humor.
Yes, we are your hosts, Adam and Vanessa Lambert, and we're committed to helping you live life fully expressed physically, mentally, and experientially. Sit back, grab a cup of coffee, and join the conversation.
Hey everybody, it's Adam and Vanessa Lambert, and this is Be the Wellness Podcast.
Welcome, everyone. Super excited. It feels like we haven't done an intro in a second, but
I know. Well,
it's really only been like a week.
I know. It's, you know what it is it's doing the podcast on Facebook Live, and then you feel like you did it.
Yeah.
You know, and then so that now you're doing an intro, you're like, what are we introing?
What are we introing? Exactly. Yeah, but been loving doing the Facebook Live stuff. It's cool.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
Yeah, it's like a whole other level of technological challenges.
Exactly.
You know, but it's fun though, and it's nice to, I don't know. I think it's cool.
I think it is really cool. It's cool to be able to like feel it more in real time with people, even though obviously you're still in different locations. There's something about having that video set up that makes you feel like you're in real person. And actually, this week we were actually
In real person.
With the awesome founder of Wellness Force Radio, Josh Trent, who is just such an awesome guy.
Yeah, he's a cool cat.
He's just super cool. And, you know, we met Josh. Obviously, we've known about Josh and we've seen him floating around in this wellness world, but didn't really know him personally until last year when he reached out to us to have Jerry, the founder of Rhythmia, on our podcast. And just instantly clicked with him and hit it off when we had our first conversation, and just really liked him. And he just seemed like such a genuine person. And then having gotten to know him more and more over the last really year or so, he's just such a genuine, like heartfelt person. There's just no bad vibes around him.
Yeah. Yeah. It seems like that. I mean, he just sort of leads with that, right? So it's like there's a wake of heartfeltness that just kind of follows him around, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And, you know, I had the pleasure of going on his podcast about a month ago, I think. So, you know, him and I were able to like go full hippie and talk about all the stuff that I love to talk about, and, you know, really kind of dive into some of the more esoteric sides of Vanessa Lambert's brain and heart. And that was really fun, and just really enjoyed that podcast and got a lot of great feedback about it. So if you haven't had a chance to check that out, go over to Wellness Force Radio, check that out. That was only just a few weeks ago that it came out. So you can check it out on his, obviously his traditional stream. And then he did actually do a live Facebook of it as well. So there's a couple of ways to get at it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Turns out you can just Google Vanessa Lambert Wellness Force.
Yes.
And it'll come up.
And all the things will be there.
Good old Google.
But let's talk about Josh really quick. And we're not going to dive into the interview quite yet. We've got a few things to cover, but let's just talk a little bit about him, because he is the founder of Wellness Force Media, as we mentioned, which includes the Wellness Force Radio podcast. But he's also spent 16 years as a trainer, researcher, and facilitator, discovering the physical and emotional intelligence for humans to thrive in our modern world. And I really love that. It's like, you know, there's a lot of ways to describe what people are doing in this space, but I really love that he is committed to helping people discover their own physical and emotional intelligence. Like, that really just resonates with me so deeply, because it's really, if you think about it, that's actually what we as facilitators, coaches, you know, influencers, whatever you want to call us in this world, are trying to do, is get you to tap into your own knowledge.
Right.
And he's really coming out and just like giving you that straight up, like, hey, all of this exists inside of you. How can you tap into the own intelligence that exists inside of you already, and really just move the ball forward from that place of knowingness. And I just really appreciate and respect his vibe and the way that he approaches things.
Yeah, his jam.
His jam.
His overall jam is right up your alley.
Yes.
Yeah, it's cool.
It is. It is right up my alley. And you know what? I'm not alone because he has a top-ranked iTunes podcast. So, and I think we actually did an interview here the other day where I'm not entirely sure who we interviewed or what we did, but people showed up with cameras and we were all interviewed and Josh was here and he mentioned in that interview that, the podcast has surpassed 1 million downloads. And so I am not alone. We are not alone in just recognizing the authenticity and the integrity of this human.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's a fact. And we're going to talk to him at length.
We are going to talk to him at length in person, and you can feel all the good vibes of us actually being in the same room.
Yeah.
But first, if you guys are enjoying this podcast, please take a moment to leave a 5-star review.
Yeah, it makes a big difference.
It makes a huge difference. And to be fair, we're really, really bad about asking for them.
I know.
And it's partially because we don't want to have to remind you you're listening to a podcast. We want you to feel like you've just come into our home and we're all hanging out having a conversation. That's really what we love about the way our podcast is. And and the intentionality behind it is to make you feel like you're with friends.
Right.
And so you don't want to be with that annoying friend who's like, hey, bro, do this,
like
do this.
me on
Hey,
Facebook.
hey, yeah. like my post. But instead, a friend would say to a friend, hey, can you do me this favor? And you would say, you know what? Yeah, I'm going to do that for you because I care about you.
Right.
And so we are asking you as friends that if you care, to stop and leave a 5-star review and just let us know and it really makes a difference in the rankings and all of that good stuff. And, we're not super hung up on that. We're not super driven by all of that, but it makes a difference for the kind of guests we can get and all that mamma jamma. So
yeah. Help us help you.
Help us help you. It always comes back to that. It really does. It's not for us. It's for you.
Right. At the end of the day. And you get to, put your little name or moniker or whatever it is out there in the internet.
Yeah.
And you can tell people, I left a review over here. You can go see what I wrote.
Yes. And then the next time you hear us talk about this, you won't have to have that guilty pang in your stomach of like, oh damn, man. I still haven't done that yet.
Yeah.
I listen to this podcast every single week and I've yet to just get in there and leave the 5-star review.
Right.
And you can leave this on iTunes. You can leave it on Stitcher Radio. You can leave it on iHeartRadio. You can leave it wherever you listen to the podcast. So if you're like, oh, well, I don't listen to it on iTunes, that's all good.
Yeah.
Get in where you fit in, yo.
Yeah, everybody has pretty much the same kind of setup.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
It's all very Yelpish.
Exactly.
You enter the stars, you write something.
I don't think you can review us on Yelp.
No, but it seems like that's the one that people are probably super familiar with.
Yeah,
right?
totally.
Like, doesn't everybody leave Yelp reviews?
Yeah, totally.
I don't know. Well, everybody reads
they
them.
know that. They know
Right.
about it at least.
Right.
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah.
So
it's a
anyway,
similar thing.
Moving on. We're not going to spend, I just spent like a good 5 minutes on that. So I'm not going to spend any more time on it. But, thank you to those who have left reviews. It makes the world of difference to us. And we really appreciate you. And what next?
What next?
Yeah.
Let's talk briefly about Body Mind Roadmap.
Yes.
Because that program is coming to a close for the first class that ran through it. They're going to be done here in the next couple of weeks. And, I knew that this program was going to be solid, from like the, I don't know, perspective of I built it, and it's
Right.
and I built it based on years of experience of trying to figure out how to best communicate diet and exercise and how to fit this stuff into your life so that you can actually do it kind of once and for all. And, what it really comes down to is that the fundamentals of eating and the fundamentals of nutrition and what we know about how our bodies work and how to sort of individualize whatever eating plan or diet or kind of, trajectory you're taking with this, whether it's I want to be super low carb because of this, or I want to be higher carb because of this, or I don't really care about my macronutrients. I just want something that's going to work. The fundamentals, like the things about the way that you eat, how you go about it, how you source your food, how you do all of that, those are common, right? Those
Right.
are the common denominators
They're
of how
cornerstones.
how you do this successfully. And that's really what Roadmap is all about, is teaching you those fundamentals, getting those things down pat, and then fine tuning and massaging to whatever dietary approach you want to take, and whatever dietary approach is actually going to work for what your goals are. And so one of the things that we see often is that people come in with an idea, and it's, I read this, or I listened to this blog post, or listen. You can do that these days.
You can actually.
Some people do, yeah. You can actually listen to blog posts these days, so it's not too far off. But you know what I mean. They gathered from somewhere out there in the diet and fitness universe that they had an idea about how they want to go about reaching their goal. And we're going to use fat loss because that's almost always what it is. You know, I mean, there's occasionally somebody's like, you know what, I really want to put on some fat.
Right.
But not very often, you know, that's usually not the case. So they hear about some idea and they're like, okay, look, I really want to try keto. And so they go because they've, see all the before and after pictures, and they see all of this stuff, and it's worked for so many people, and it sounds like a good idea, and all of this. And so they go about approaching the specifics of that diet. And they say, okay, in order to be keto, my understanding is I need to eat a little bit less protein, and I need to eat, essentially no carbohydrates, no effective carbohydrates. And I need to just do that, and then maybe blow on a stick little keto meter thing occasionally and see if I'm in ketosis, right? And so they dive into that without necessarily addressing everything else that comes along with eating. Like, how do you feel about your food?
Right.
How much do you eat based on your emotions? How much do you eat based on an understanding of whether you're full or not?
Right.
You know what I mean? There's like there's all of these sort of intrinsic factors in your body about the way that you eat and how it affects whether or not you're feeling full, and whether it's actually giving your body the nutrients that it needs to thrive, right?
Right. It's getting back to that emotional and physical intelligence we were talking about.
Yeah.
Like, this is a learned skill, right? Like, you may have the knowledge inside of you, but you may not realize or recognize the things that are speaking to you if you haven't learned yet to how to interpret all of that data for yourself.
Yeah, for sure. And unfortunately, some of the things that, and we'll use keto again as an example, some of the things that are initially positive about a ketogenic diet, like, removing processed carbohydrate from your diet. And for most people, this feeling of like not worrying about being hungry, so the ketogenic diet does a great job of being satiating for people, okay? Elevated protein, elevated fat, and minimized carbohydrate for most people is a recipe for no hunger. And while that's great in the beginning, what we tend to see for a lot of folks is they end up under eating chronically. And then there's a whole hormonal and metabolic cascade that happens after that, which isn't necessarily beneficial depending on the person, right? So it can become this thing of under eating chronically when you're on one of these kind of diets, if you're not accounting for your nutrient intake somewhere. If micronutrient intake, mineral balance, and that kind of stuff isn't at the forefront of your diet strategy,
Right.
then
Keto or otherwise. Right.
Then that stuff's going to probably start to dwindle, and you're going to start to feel the effects of that.
Right.
And so what we want people to do, and what we coach you through doing within Body Mind Roadmap, is to account for all of that first. Account for the nutrient density. Account for understanding what your actual hunger cues are. What is your body telling you when it's craving something? And get that stuff squared away. And then everything else is going to become easier. Then if you want to be keto, great, but do it only to the degree that you're meeting your nutritional requirements.
Right.
You're getting the micronutrients, the fiber, the stuff that your body actually needs to function well. And then you can tinker with the rest of it as you go.
Right. And you're actually able to now interpret the sensations and the feelings and what's going on with you because you've spent some time diving into like, what are the signs and symptoms of being overfed, underfed, undernourished, all of those things, which people just don't really think about it because we're, we have a surplus of food. It's hard for people to think that they could be malnourished, but many, many people are malnourished. Even if you're getting tons of calories, it doesn't mean that you're actually being nourished to the degree that your body needs to create that happy, healthy homeostasis. And so this is about discovering that for yourself. Like, what are all of those things that really create a stomping ground, so to speak, for your body to thrive and to effortlessly now function and, lean out or build muscle or whatever it is that you then want to do with it.
Right.
But first you have to understand, that's why we call it roadmap, right? This is why it's a roadmap. It's a roadmap to discovering what's there for you.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, and frankly, how to optimize any dietary strategy that you want to take, once you get this stuff hammered out. And we've just seen it so many times where you go through this iteration, whether it's paleo, whether it's keto, whether it's a vegan diet, whether it's whatever it is,
whether it's no diet, no plan, right?
Well, yeah, and that's actually a really good point, because the foods that are available to us, even if you're just, I'm just going to eat a well-rounded, balanced diet, of clean foods, man, it's tough these days,
right,
to get the nutrients that you actually need. And so then it ends up showing up like cravings. It ends up showing up like low energy levels. It ends up, all of these things that you're like, God, I've been eating what I would consider to be perfect, but I'm not seeing the fat loss results that I want, or I don't have the energy to go to the gym, and I'm tanking throughout the day. So I'm relying on, 5-hour energies or coffee or whatever it is to just get through the day.
Right. Or the most common one that we see is, actually I feel pretty good, but my weight just doesn't budge.
Right.
Which is a super common one for many, many people out there, is they're like, I feel like I'm doing the best I can. Things are pretty good, but like, I just can't seem to drop any weight. I just can't seem to shed any of this body fat.
Yeah. Yeah. And so Body Mind Roadmap is really about going back to the basics and making sure that you have the foundations of nutrition dialed in.
Right.
That you're listening to your body, that you're taking time to actually eat your meals, that you're making it part of your life,
right,
not just something that's required in order to, feed the machine, so to speak.
Right.
And it makes a really, really big difference for folks. And so what we've seen through the first run of this is that people start losing body fat almost immediately by changing nothing about their diet, just changing the way that they're actually eating. And it makes a world of difference. And then, of course, when we get into the second half of the course and we start really, tinkering with the individual calorie ranges and macronutrient spreads and getting that stuff timed around your workouts and doing all of that, it just accelerates the progress.
Right.
So it's all about building that foundation and then getting to tinker with the stuff that, most people jump straight into without the foundation, right? They want to go right to building the roof.
Sure.
Let's put a big shiny roof on this thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep, totally. And, furthermore, a lot of folks have never really got, the fundamental basics down to the point that now they should be adding the roof, or they should even be adding the siding. This is the thing about it, is that you've got to understand the fundamentals. You have to have the basics before you can throw, 10 other tasks at yourself.
Right.
It's difficult for your body and your mind to deal with those additional tasks when it hasn't developed that steady base and doesn't actually have the platform to work from. And so it is really important that if you've never taken time to actually really study your habits, one habit, one moment at a time in a systematic way, you really haven't set this foundation. And that's why this is why we built the program. That's why Adam built the program, is because we had Unveil Your Wellness. We had this amazing, full, complete system for folks. But what we realized is that we hadn't actually given you an opportunity to really integrate each of those tasks, each of those asks, so to speak, to really flourish in that, maintenance program that Unveil Your Wellness is. And so, Unveil Your Wellness is going away. We've got a new system that follows on called Body Mind Experience, but the way to get into that is through Body Mind Roadmap.
Yep.
So if you want to get integrated into our system, you want to be part of this, this wellness world that we're creating and really get some hands-on deep dive coaching into your story and what's there, this is the way to do it. Body Mind Roadmap. And it only happens twice a year.
Yeah. And so the next time it launches is actually August 5th. And then after that, it won't start again until February.
Right.
And we do this because from our perspective, we want to be able to give the most time and energy and attention to the individuals that are in that course so that we really get this foundation laid. Because once they roll into Body Mind Experience, the expectation is that you've got a pretty good grasp on this stuff. And obviously, us and our mentors are always in there to help. But this is the this is the deep dive. This is the prerequisite.
This is the prerequisite,
to get into that program.
Right.
So if this is stuff that you have been struggling with or are interested in, handling, then I encourage you to go to the website, go to and I'll put the link in the show notes of this show, but go to the Body Mind Roadmap, get on the pre-sale list, and, get in.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you've got some great content rolling out, including a bunch of testimonials and just, some folks talking about their experience, some of the success they had. People were losing 20s of pounds.
Yeah. Oh, yeah,
20s
for sure.
and 40s and lots
high
of
teens and lots of 20s in
yeah,
there.
yeah. So it's, it's highly effective. And for folks out there that maybe dabbled in our Unveil Your Wellness program prior to this time too, and found that was maybe too overwhelming because it was, again, a complete solution, this would be a great time for you to sort of turn back the wheel and take one step at a time towards all of the things that essentially were embodied in Unveil Your Wellness. But if you found that you couldn't maybe quite keep up, then this is a great time to get the education that then will prepare you to be able to maintain and handle that amount of sort of self-care and self-awareness.
Yeah. Yeah. It's slow and incremental shifts, and this is the whole point is to make it so easy that it doesn't seem like you're doing anything.
Right.
But then at the end of the 6 months, you've completely changed the way that you go about, eating.
Yeah, absolutely.
And fitting the exercise and movement and stuff into your day.
Yeah. And the other cool thing is that you're actually getting coaching calls, two calls a month with Adam, so there's a lot to be learned. This is a serious deep dive into your wellness story. So we really encourage folks out there that if you're looking to kind of go, all right, I want to really get educated. I want to really own my health and fitness. I want to really understand why it is that I feel the way I do, and why it is I take the actions, and why it is that, maybe perhaps I don't take the actions, where I find that I don't have enough strong enough quote unquote willpower, which is what we hear all the time. And, often if you don't have willpower, it's not your fault. Yeah. It's just that you haven't quite taken the time to understand what's going on for you, what's really happening to your physiology that is making it not possible for you to stick to white knuckle whatever it is you're trying to do.
Yeah. Yeah. White knuckling is not sustainable.
Right.
And so we designed this program so that it doesn't take willpower.
Right.
So that it builds incrementally, and it's just like, next thing you know, you're like, no, I just chew more slowly now. I take more time at meals. Like, this is just how long it takes me to eat. Yeah. It's not something you're doing. Right. It's just who you are. Yeah.
Absolutely. Awesome. So enough about Body Mind Roadmap. Let's get into this awesome interview with Josh Trent. We hope you guys enjoy this as much as we did, and let's go.
And we are actually live.
Woo, we did it. Welcome to the podcast, Josh.
This is so cool. I have to say I'm extremely impressed with your setup. I feel like I'm in an actual studio.
Essentially, you walked in the door and we were like, okay, can you download this app? Set yourself up. Put yourself on camera. Right. Host a watch party. Like, there was like 40 things you had to do.
We also blow dried my hair.
We also blow dried your hair.
Let's not forget that.
Yeah. But we got here.
It's all working out.
So, welcome. We're super stoked you're here.
Thank you.
This has been a long time coming.
This has been a long time
coming. We've had some logistical obstacles. I don't know if it's logistical, but scheduling. Timing was like a thing. It was happening for us. So,
because y'all travel a lot,
dude, and you do too,
across the world, empowering life. You're here now.
Yes, and you are too. So we did it. Yes,
we all figured it out.
So, when you walked in, or before we went live, actually, you asked us to take a deep breath, and I said, "Wait,
okay,
let's go live first.
No breathing until we're actually live.
We go live.
Hold your breath.
Hold your breath, literally. But now that we are live, I love this because we did this when I was on your podcast, and it's just such an awesome way to like ground the energy and get everybody on the same page. And so I would love for you to lead it.
Okay. Yeah. And I just did a Wim Hof about 45 minutes ago.
So you're like a breathing expert.
So we'll just put our hands on our belly and just exhale all the air, and then just inhale through the nose quickly. And just hold and just feel whatever was going on beforehand. And then we're going to let it go really slow for 8 seconds. Wow.
Sweet.
It's interesting. Like one breath can just
Right?
set the tone, isn't it?
Changes the whole deal.
That's the amazing thing to me, because I think about people who have a story that they don't have any time to like take care of themselves. And I always think to myself, like, do you have time to take one breath?
Yeah.
Like, how about 5 breaths? Because
You did an Instagram video about this.
Yes.
We chatted on the
Yes.
phone or something, and you're like, "Yeah, I'm going to do it," and you did it, and I
Yes.
watched it, and
Yeah.
I breathed with you.
right, exactly. Because
It took less than 60 seconds.
it takes
Yeah.
less than 60 seconds to just take care of yourself, to care for yourself. And like, so that's where you have to recognize, like, if there's a story that you have about caring for yourself or
Yup.
not, because caring for yourself does not mean you have 2 hours to spend at the gym and meditating and going for a walk and,
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah, sprout your own seeds for your shake. Like,
Right.
Yes.
Right. Getting your alfalfa sprouts growing.
Right.
Yeah.
If you can, that's amazing. Don't get me
compress
wrong.
that.
Yeah.
But, so much exists in the care of ourselves in that 1 minute, that one breath. So, yeah, thank you for leading that and kicking
you.
that off. So, I really wanted to take a moment for listeners to get to know you, because you're all over the map as well. You have interviewed some amazing people. You have this awesome Wellness Force Radio. You're just really out there and connecting, and really, it's more than just connecting. You are like a catalyst within the connection. You're like taking the people and connecting them and helping something happen for them. And I can say this for sure, because the way that we met you was you literally reaching out and saying, "Hey, I want to connect you with Rhythmia to make this amazing thing happen," which was our first trip to Rhythmia.
Yeah.
So I'd love to know about your background, because I think so much of like how we grow up informs the story of who we become. So I'd love to like take it back to little Josh.
Oh, Little J?
Yeah, let's go back to Little J.
His name was Bambino because he liked Babe Ruth.
Oh, nice.
Baseball player.
Yeah.
Because he was a little chunky. When
legit.
he was young, and Babe Ruth was
Yeah.
kind of chunky, but he was like the greatest home run hitter ever. So Little Josh is actually Bambino. But when Little Josh was growing up, like when he was feeling that pull towards like the archetype of the famous baseball player, he was in a home that his mother was manic bipolar, and his dad left when he was 2 months old. So he was also born premature, so like less than 5 pounds. So the first 2 weeks of his life, he was in an incubator. So there was a lot going on there.
Wow.
Like for some soul contract reason, I came into the world and wanted these challenges. I see it now as a gift, but I didn't see it that way.
Right.
Yeah, funny thing, right?
So like, without the proper guidance from parental units, I really had a hard time dealing with stress. Like I found an overused drug that a lot of people use is called food.
Right.
I found the food because when I was having like the solar plexus tension or the physical tension that I didn't know what to do with, I would use food to quell it.
Of course,
You know,
yeah.
and this is where a lot of people start.
Yeah.
And so now, to no surprise, without the right guidance from parents, being kind of a chunky kid, getting picked on, really setting me up for like a downward spiral. So now I'm 21. I'm in a body that's 280 pounds, and I'm at a job. I was actually a Mercedes-Benz technician, and which I hated. It was nothing like this.
Right.
There was no talking. I was just sweating over a hood.
Yeah.
So I was just ripe for like a massive sledgehammer, like a massive change. And what happened was I was at a party drinking because in my early 20s, I drank a lot because I didn't know like what was going on with me. I didn't have that inner intelligence. I didn't have any kind of understanding of my emotions yet. I felt things, but I didn't know what to do with them. So I was drinking, and I remember this like it was yesterday. I slammed this red party cup, the solo cups that I beer pong with.
Oh, yeah.
I slammed the cup down, and I just had this first moment of like a connection to something else because I had like tried so hard to lose weight, and I was so sad and depressed, and like my mom's illness, and I didn't really know what was going on in my life, and I was in a job that I hated. I just felt this voice, and it said, "There's something else to life than this.
Oh, wow.
Like there's more to life than this." So I slammed the cup down, ran home drunk for 3 miles. It's legit. Ran home drunk.
Yeah.
Got home. I think I typed in like, "How do I lose weight?" on the computer, and then that was 18 months of like Atkins and low carb and vegetarian, and like I didn't even learn about paleo at that time. And that was a year and a half of experimenting. I got so sad and so frustrated with like little results that I was getting that I just said, I need to change my environment. And so I sold everything I owned, moved to Hawaii, went to Oahu, surfed and hiked and fished and like spent time like understanding who Josh Trent is.
Oh, wow.
At 25 years old, I was out there, 24, 25 years old. And I found fitness, and I loved the way that fitness could get me out of my head and into my body. And I was working at the gym, and this fitness manager came up to me, and he was like, hey, I've seen you get pretty good results. Like, you should think about being a trainer. And I was like, what's a trainer?
Yeah.
I didn't even know personal training was a thing.
Right.
And this is like 2005.
Yeah.
So I was like, wow, what a beautiful line of work. You get to help people. And little did I know, though, I did that for 10 years. And during that time, I was like really busy shining light on my clients and everyone else. But the stuff that made me gain the weight and the stuff that caused me the inner turmoil, I didn't know how to deal with it because I was so busy serving and shining light on other people. And it really kind of started eating at me. And when I left fitness after 10 years, I went to corporate America. I had bought wellnessforce.com in 2009. I put it in a little box and like said, oh, I'll get to it when it's the right time.
Right.
I'll get to my dream when it's the right time.
Later.
And because I wanted that safety and security. I think looking back, like I haven't thought about this yet until you asked me. Like, I think I just really needed safety.
Of course.
Because I didn't know what safety felt like. It's almost like my nervous system needed to feel what safe was. So I got this, quote, safe job, sitting in a cubicle, committing spiritual suicide, making good money, working for the Active Network. Ended up getting fired one day, which was a beautiful gift.
Yeah.
A beautiful gift.
Yeah.
Driving home that day thinking, can I cuss on your show?
Yeah, totally.
Okay.
You're like, wait.
Thinking, what the fuck am I going to do? I'm just like,
Yeah.
oh my God. So I'm in my car, I'm driving home, and I also felt in tandem with this panic, I felt like liberation.
Yeah, of course.
I felt like my soul had been like unchained for a moment. And so I got home, I went to a sound healing a week later with my ex-girlfriend Amy, where they put the sound bowls on your body and they resonate them.
Wow.
And all of a sudden I'm like laying on the floor and there's like tears coming out of my eyes. And I'm thinking, why am I crying? Like I'm not like, but they're still
it's
coming
purging,
out.
yeah.
Right.
And that's when something unlocked in me, and I was like, if I don't do this dream, I'm going to die.
Yeah.
Like I'd rather die than go back to what I used to do.
Yeah, totally.
And I still feel that way. I would much rather die and leave the planet than go back to something that kills my soul.
Yeah, I totally get that. I know
So that was a big transition.
Yeah, that's so awesome. I know for Adam, like just even though he, I don't know if you know this, but he was a fire chief and he just left his job like a year ago, right?
Yeah, just over a
Yes.
year,
I remember talking about that.
Yeah, and I obviously it wasn't me doing the job, but it had such an influence on the way that we lived our life and kind of how far we could go with things that like I remember when he left, there was this like nervousness about it, but there was also this like now there's hope. Like no matter what happens, there's hope to actually go with the dream as far as it could possibly take you instead of being tethered back into this space of safety, you know?
Yes.
And so I can understand that.
It's the same feeling.
Yeah.
It's like we understand the hero's journey, you know, separation, initiation, return. That was like an initiation. Getting fired from a job is a massive initiation for anyone.
Sure.
It's like losing a loved one or having an injury or losing a job. Like it's up there.
Totally.
Huge ego like
Change mountain.
check, right?
Yeah.
Because
gut check.
So
the universe is like, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
From a place of like firm love. And that's what I felt like. I felt like I didn't know it at the time, but I felt like I was in a ceremony. I ended up doing my first ceremony with plant medicine shortly after that.
Oh, wow.
Because I was like, my girlfriend and I were going through a rough transition. If you guys want, we can talk about plant medicine. That's a definite part of how I've navigated this 3D.
I mean, I want to talk about plant medicine basically every day, all day.
Exactly.
That's like my dream. But
before we bump onto that though, I want to talk about, or I want to just highlight something that you said, which is, I think pretty incredible. This fact that you had this realization that you needed to change your environment in order to actually change yourself. Yeah. Like that's a pretty, and so you were 24, 25, something when that happened?
Yeah, 24.
Yeah, that's pretty good. You know what I mean? Like we see people all the time significantly farther along than that in life who can't or are shocked when that ends up being the thing. You know, somebody's like, hey, you know what? You really needed to just get out of this environment and it's going to change everything. They're like, what do you mean? What could that possibly change? You know? And even, a matter of a couple of weeks away in one shape or form or another, you're like, oh yeah, no, this is a really big part of it. You know, and there's so many times that our circumstances start to dictate who we can be, right? We're put in
Totally.
everybody else's little box.
Yeah.
So I think it's amazing
So
that
good
you
job.
had that early. Yeah.
I'd love to piggyback on you because what you're saying is so true. And I'll never forget this. Before my grandma passed away, she was like, "Oh, you're going to be moving? You're going to be going somewhere?" She's like, Josh, wherever you go, there you are. And I was like, damn, grandma hit me with that wisdom.
Yeah.
Because it's true. Like,
Yeah.
yes, if we're on the path and we're conscious about like what we're coming from as far as integrity, like if we know that we want to change, maybe we don't know exactly what we want to change, but we know that by going to a different environment that we can see new horizons for change. That's one thing.
Yeah.
I think we do see though a lot of people that are constantly seeking
Running. I agree.
I'm going to go to Hawaii. I'm going to go to Vegas. I'm going to go to the next Deepak Chopra event, and they just go from thing to thing to thing, but they never like integrate.
Yeah.
They don't actually like settle and
Yeah.
like let the lesson embody.
Yeah. No, I
that's
totally.
a solid distinction.
I totally agree. I remember I really learned that lesson when I was 19. I drove to Panama and back with my boyfriend at the time. And I remember thinking like, I was trying to find myself, right? At that age, you're trying to figure things out. And I kept thinking like, oh, maybe it's going to be in Guatemala. Maybe it's going to be in El Salvador. I find myself. And, 9 months later, I'm back in the States and I'm still like looking for myself, quote unquote. And it was such a beautiful way to learn that same thing where it's like, okay, yes, traveling can inform you and all of those experiences can inform and like mold who you become. But at the end of the day, you're still in your body. You're still like faced with the same thoughts, the same struggles, the same things. Yeah. I love that. Okay. Quickly though, I've got to hover on Hawaii because I spent a couple of years living there. And I think Hawaii is like, it's a mama all in itself. It's such an incubator for amazing energy and transformation. And I just really love the island so deeply. So I'd love to just hear a little bit about your experience. And in particular, if you can just maybe conjure up like a moment or two where you really felt connected with the magic of Hawaii, like the actual aloha spirit or like what that was and what that did for you.
So I'm remembering the Pali Highway. It cuts through a mountain in Oahu, and there's a hike on the backside of it, and it's like a really long hike. I didn't know how long it was at the time, but I was in this phase where I would go out in the morning and I wouldn't come back until dark every day. That's all I did for like months. And I found this trail, and I was like, okay, I got some food and snacks and water. I'm good. And I go on this trail. I end up getting lost, and the sun is going down, and I'm starting to kind of freak out a little bit. I don't have a headlamp or anything. What the fuck's going to happen? And then I hear in the bushes, like they have a big warthog population. Like boar population in Hawaii. And I hear these boars around me, and I'm just like, oh my God. And so I literally, this is where I had this connection to the Gaia, to the mother out there. I just kind of stopped and I was like, please let everything be okay. Because it just took me to that place. And I ended up like just hearing people, and then I went and asked them the way back. So it was like literally 5 minutes later, like people came by, they're like, yeah, you're okay. Just go back this way and look for the sign. And I made it back to the car, exhausted, like laid on the trunk of my car and just was like laying there like, thank you so much for like letting me get out of that. For allowing, for guiding me to get out of that. And I felt the presence of Hawaii in that moment.
I love that.
Because I was deep in there. Like if those people didn't come by, I don't know.
No,
Stuff
happens.
That was a big moment.
Yeah, for sure. I totally get that. And so before we move away from Hawaii, I've got to ask about your surfing experience because, the ocean, I love surfing. We love surfing. That's like a big part of our soul journey. So I'd love to hear about like what's there for you. I felt really connected to surfing then. I've kind of tapered back a little bit. I don't surf as much as I'd like to anymore because I'm really just focused on being in nature and the gym. But when you asked me that, it brought me right back because I had like 10 years where I just loved the ocean so much. And when I went out to Hawaii, they measure their waves from the back. So if it's like a 5-foot day, that means it's a 10-foot wave. So I would like stay on the inside and just paddle around and try to catch like the little shore break waves. And I just said, you know what? I'm just going to like face my fear. I'm just going to go for it. So I went to this place called Sandy's Beach. And Sandy's is like where the water breaks on dry sand. And people get killed there every year. And just like a shore pound.
I was renting a room in Hawaii from a friend, and he would go there and surf. And I'll never forget like the first really big wave that I caught. I like went down the face of the wave and I came back up and I touched the top of the wave. And I was like, oh my God, I touched the top of the wave, and like I came back down. But then when I went back out there again, I felt like I was going to drown.
Right.
Because just getting through and doing like 15 duck dives, and then just like
duck paddle,
fire, and I'm like, okay, you need to just chill, dude. Just go back in. You shouldn't be out here.
Yeah.
So it's the ultimate equalizer. Like the Hawaiian Ocean is like. Seriously, like if a grandmother were to slap someone, that would be her tool to do.
Well, and people don't realize there's no continental shelf in Hawaii, so
it just comes right out. There's no slowing.
Yes, exactly. So it comes from deep water.
These waves punch people.
And when you say they measure them from the back, the other thing they do is they largely downplay even that size. So they're like, oh, it's 4 feet from the back, and really it's like 15 feet in the front, it's like, it's not even like just actually doubling it. There's like this, and they really take pride in it. It's kind of this thing where they're like, oh, it's only 3 to 4 feet, and when you get there it's like humongous.
It's like the opposite of what we get. Oh man, I was out and it had to be at least 15 feet. It was double overhead today, and it's like it was maybe shoulder high. And it's like the total opposite. It's miscalculation.
It's awesome though. I love Hawaii, and actually we've been talking about, I'm really missing it. We haven't been back in 5 years. And that's like insane for me. So
I'm feeling the call to go back to Hawaii too. I'm in a new relationship. It's very recent.
Oh, nice. And do tell.
Well, the other day, I mean, this happened in Sedona. Actually, there's a deeper story with Paul Chek if you guys want to go there.
Let's go there.
Okay, you want to go there?
Let's go.
So since we're talking about Hawaii and the feminine energy, the Hawaiian Islands are like a feminine magnet. Trees and grass and coconuts and waves. It's a very cooling energy to the masculine. I think that's why in my early 20s I was drawn out there because I was just like white knuckling life. Like a masculine energy, like completion. So I was drawn out there by the feminine energy. So interesting enough, I've been single for 3.5 years. I left that relationship when I launched the podcast. That's what kind of broke us up in a way. So for over these past 3.5 years, I've been doing ceremony, breath work, deep dive, emotional intelligence work, like really getting after it. And I was at PaleoFX and I was on Paul Chek's show, and he turned to me all of a sudden. He's like, so what are you most excited about? And I said, well, I'm most excited about calling in divine partnership. And he's like, well, do you want help with that? And I was like, sure. Paul Chek wants to help me.
You're
great. And he goes, all right, awesome. I'm going to give you Paramahansa Yogananda's Soul Union Prayer. Paramahansa Yogananda is the founder of SRF, Self-Realization Fellowship.
So which is near where you live.
It's right there with the Golden Dome. So on his show, we do this prayer. And this is on my birthday, by the way. April 29th, right after PaleoFX, on my birthday morning.
Wow.
I'm on his show as a guest. And he says, okay, repeat after me. Bless me that I choose my life companion according to the laws of perfect soul union. And we said it twice. And when even right now, I just feels like weight. And when he said it, I was like, wow, that's really exciting. That sounds so true. And I was like, all right, I'll just let it go. And it was an exciting day. 9 days later, I'm in Sedona. I'm doing breath work with Anahata Ananda, and we did a podcast. And I meet this woman, Carrie Michelle, at Cathedral Rock. And right away, I was just like, whoa, is my body supposed to have this much gravity? Like, like pulling me to the ground. And we talked and we hung out, and we just both identified like, whoa, there's something cool here going on. So 2 weeks later, she came out to San Diego. Then I recently just got back from Sedona. We did an incredible just like ceremony with each other by the stream, and just I looked at her and I said, I don't want to date anybody besides you. And she goes, well, me neither. And I said, okay, well, do you want to be my girlfriend? Like high school.
And she was do you want to go steady?
So that just happened. But
awesome.
But the seed was planted, like those 3.5 years of being single, and then being on Paul's show and having him do the prayer. I'm telling you guys, like something shifted. Like something moved in the collective for me. And I was like, that feels real.
Like a pin got dropped.
Or like a chip got pulled out and stuck in somewhere. Maybe like the mass controller, wherever they are. So, okay, we'll give Josh this now. You know?
You think about it like one of those old switchboards, and they're like, okay, I'll connect you. Plug it in.
So, by the way, I love biography of a yogi is Autobiography of
Yes.
Yogi is one of my favorite
And
books
the
of all time.
documentary.
Oh, it's insane. It's insane.
I watch it, I'm like, oh my God, this is so good.
And the book, I've actually read the book more than once because when you read it, it reads like it's fiction, but it's nonfiction.
Yeah.
So it's like you're reading this stuff and you can't believe that this is real, like the things that are taking place, but it really opens your awareness to like the power of really understanding the elements and how to work with it and the alchemy of things. And it's really, really an incredible book.
And his story's so powerful. Like most of his mantras or teachings, they're very simplistic.
Yeah.
It's not this long, drawn out tirade. I don't know how you guys feel about Osho. My mind totally changed after I saw Wild Wild Country.
Yeah. Well, I love that. Yeah. I mean, I think some of the lessons in the books are beautiful. And like, I mean, that's just a whole thing. That's a whole nother thing.
Yeah.
But the books and like the words, if you read them, like there's a lot there that's really beautiful and really profound for sure.
Yeah.
But I'm not like
Yeah, you don't have to turn every
thing into
profound thinker into a cult.
Yeah.
It's like
This is another part too.
Yeah.
Like, I just feel like the message is so much more powerful than the messenger.
Yeah.
Like I love Metallica, the music,
Right.
but I don't know these guys' personal lives.
Right.
Yeah, totally.
So I didn't know Paramahansa Yogananda, but I read his teachings and like I feel like whenever we absorb truth, it lights up a part of us.
Yeah.
And no matter who's saying it, it's like that truth is universal.
I love that. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about plant medicine because I mean, obviously that's how we came together, the three of us.
Yeah.
And I don't even know where to start, but maybe we should just kick it off by, I'd love to hear about your very first ceremony and maybe like one of the major things that came to you and kind of became the catalyst for you to then turn around and say, wow, this is so impactful and so has created such an opening in me that I want to now go perpetuate this in the world. Or if it even happened at that particular time, but maybe just kick it off with how you came into the plant medicine.
My ex-girlfriend Amy brought me to the medicine. Because she felt called. And it's funny, my first ceremony kicked my ass because we found out later that the shaman was not in integrity. So the person that was leading it had like a lot of things going on in their personal life and they brought that into the ceremony. I didn't know that at that time.
Right.
But for the first 5 hours after I drank the medicine, I was just like, nothing's happening. What's going on? I did another drink. This is 2014, end of 2014. And I had this moment where I was like, God, I feel really sick now. This sucks. Like, this medicine sucks. Which really, medicine has to be bitter before it's sweet.
Yeah.
Right? So I go into the bathroom and I'm just like, what is going on right now? I felt these vines like wrapping around my legs. And then I was like shitting, because that's what happens.
Yeah,
Right?
it does sometimes.
Shitting or puking.
Yeah.
So I'm shitting. And then I had this moment where I felt this presence. It's over my left shoulder. I can't explain. I didn't see anything. It was just a feeling. And I had this feeling of being held by the most powerful, loving, kind, sacred, just beautiful, like mother feeling, like a feminine energy that I had never experienced with my mother or with my grandmother ever. And I just felt, the way I could explain it is I just felt like held.
Yeah.
And it was this deep peace. It was such a beautiful peace because up until that time, like I had really been fighting myself for the majority of my life, making things a lot worse because I never felt supported. And when I had that little 3 minutes with her, a little short window, I was like, okay, I might be back. I might visit you again, but I was so freaked out because the energy was so weird. And my ex-girlfriend and I were like, we ended up breaking up after that. I waited a whole year to go back to the medicine. I waited till 2015.
And it was just one ceremony? Okay, one and done. Yeah.
I left. I was like, I'm never doing this again. I felt so sick.
So many times and not that like most of the time you feel like when you do it, you're like, okay, I'm good for a while. But then it's funny that recently we've had this situation where like we do the medicine, then you're ready to do it again. But in the beginning, it was like, okay, I'm good. I need a break. Yeah.
Yep. Well, because I feel like it's so easy for people to go back to the medicine without integrating.
Yeah.
But I know you guys, you base programs on integrating. So I know you know how to dose yourself. The average person doesn't know how to do that. And I would say that like, what I feel for the medicine is a once a year pressure washer for my soul. It's like once a year, no matter what, I'll do a deep dive because living in this 3D world is toxic. Like we're in an environment where it's based on unhealthy food, smog, off-gassing, weapons of mass distraction, people trying to eat away at our presence all the time. And we can only take so much of that. Like, I don't care how strong you are as a warrior. Eventually, your shield is going to get pretty dinged up.
Yeah.
And I feel like ayahuasca just reinforces your shield again, clears out all the bullshit that you might have absorbed, and gets you to a place where you can navigate more from truth. Because the truth is the scariest thing for most of us. I mean, I know this for me. I'll speak for myself. Sometimes the truth just paralyzes me. I'm like, oh my God, how am I going to do that? But I know it's true. You know? And so I feel like the plant medicine really at the core level, what it does is it brings people to the truth. I also have an opinion that plant medicine is being wielded by Gaia, by higher intelligence herself to heal this world.
I agree.
Because we have animals that are putrefying in their own feces, and then we're having CAFOs, and then we're mowing down the rainforest for cattle, and like, the world is hurting, and I think the world is using these plants with the right types of people, calling them in so that we can slowly turn this battleship.
I buy into that. Like, you know, because if you think about it, with this whole spinning ball of just like amazing chaos that we're on, that is the world, you know, and it's like everything has the ability to communicate except humans. Like, humans we're so freaking, and I think it's probably, you know, from our own making or whatever, we're so separate from everything else. You know, it's like dogs and cats communicate better than dogs and humans. You know what I mean? Dogs and right? So it's like everything communicates. And so it just makes sense that there would be some fundamental way that the plants could communicate with us. And it sure as hell seems like that's what's going on from the ceremony. And it's like, you know, this stuff gets talked about a lot in, you know, on podcasts and kind of all over the place now as it's become more popular. But I still think that it's like, not everyone who goes into ceremony has listened to, you know, Joe Rogan and Aubrey Marcus talk about ayahuasca for 17 hours. You know what I mean? And so like, they're not necessarily preloaded with the experience, right? But they all come out with the same thing. You know, there's got to be something to that, whether it's literally just like the biochemical component of the DMT release in your brain that does this, and this is just what DMT does for you, maybe. I don't know, but it's like the result is the plants are saying, hey, you know, it's time to check yourself and start paying attention to what's around you. And they can't be wrong. You know, I mean, because at the end of the day, everybody that I've had any sort of communication with who has gone into this work has come out. Maybe they didn't have some massive, profound thing and quit their job and started a nonprofit drilling wells in Africa. Like, it may not have gone that far, but
maybe it will in their second ceremony.
It might in their second ceremony. But they come out of it just like what you said, Josh. They come out feeling cleaned and back to center with themselves and like where they fit and belong. You know,
One other thing I was feeling when you were explaining that is there's so many people that are in need of the medicine that are analytical minded that get turned off by the way that people speak about it esoterically.
Totally.
So like, this has been really cool because we haven't used a lot of that language. And I think it's easy for me when I'm in my Encinitas circles or maybe here in Venice to use language that we all kind of understand and that we don't judge. We just know that it's true. But it's so important right now to use the type of language you just did because that's going to pull in the people that need the medicine the most.
I totally agree. And honestly, it's one of the things we've really tried to hold the space within talking about plant medicine and talking about this experience. And I mean, I can go a little more, I can swing a little hippier than Adam, but he does a really good job of like grounding it in.
You're sitting next to a rainbow.
I know, right?
It's a neon rainbow.
You know,
that's all good.
Everyone should have a rainbow next to them. But I think that, you know, that's another reason we really love Rhythmia too, is that it really speaks to the quote unquote normal kind of person, the person who, you know, would be turned off by it being too hippy dippy or like too much hippie speak or too much of that going on. And they'd be like, oh, those aren't my people. That isn't my tribe. And I love showing up there. And, you know, last time I was laying next to a woman who was like a grandmother, and she actually is hilarious. She had gone with her friend. Her friend had invited her. She didn't know what plant medicine was. So she got there and was like...
She surprised her with that?
No, she told her, we're going to go and we're going to do ayahuasca. It's plant medicine. And she's just like, okay, she just didn't have a context for what that meant. And that was actually the first time. The time that I was there, it was her second time she'd come back.
Okay.
And but her first time was actually from that experience, like showing up. And she's like, yeah, I just didn't really know what plant medicine. She's like, I thought we were gonna like smell flowers, maybe drink some teas and make some tinctures.
Like put some lotion on it or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
Yeah.
Put some
exactly.
lavender on it.
Essential oils, isn't that plant
She
medicine?
Exactly.
stepped on Colossus. From Magic Mountain all of a sudden.
And then she had brought back a bunch of people because obviously it had been so profound for her and she'd found such an amazing experience.
Well, and she actually didn't even drink.
And then the next time she didn't drink.
She just sat in ceremony and held space without drinking.
Yeah,
It
the
was
plant
remarkable.
told her actually that she doesn't need to drink anymore, that like she's good to go, but like to help people come back to it would be amazing. So but I agree. I think that it's really important that we don't, it's like,
you don't want to alienate people who
I guess is the
who
best
don't
word.
Speak conscious.
Conscious speak. Yeah.
Or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is why I'm so excited about what's going on with John Hopkins research and MAPS and all these serious academic institutions that are pouring lots of money into healing war veterans, healing people with chronic stress.
Right.
Legitimately what goes on from my understanding, and I mean, Dr. Jeff McNary from Rhythmia could really speak to this. You guys met him in Hong Kong, right?
Yeah.
Really, from what I know, is that the hemispheres at 7 years old, they kind of separate. It's where we formed our beliefs and values. And so what ayahuasca does, in a way, biochemically, is it joins those hemispheres again. So the creativity, the play, the expressiveness, the stuff that we did in the fucking sandbox,
Right.
all that comes back again. It comes back online.
Yeah.
And we can pick and choose what we want to bring back to the adult world. And so that's without using any kind of esoteric language.
Right.
If people are feeling that they're stressed, that they can't express themselves, maybe they can't like speak sometimes, they're feeling sad and depressed, like these are prime candidates to go deep with the medicine with the right kind of guidance.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I agree with that. And it's kind of interesting, everything seems to find equilibrium one way or the other. And you could almost, at least from the 30,000 foot level, you almost couldn't find two more polar opposite entry points into the plant medicine than like the kind of crystal swinging hippies and the like PSD ground in Navy SEALs. You know what I mean? And both of them are like, this will change your life.
Yeah.
And then everybody else just kind of fits in the nice U-shaped curve in the middle. You're like, okay. Yeah.
Everyone gets to be on the continuum.
Yep, exactly.
Wow.
So how did you then come to Rhythmia, and like how did that whole experience happen?
Well, 2018 January, they reached out to me and they were like, hey, we like your podcast. We want to have our founder on your show.
Oh, nice.
And I said, great. I think I had heard about them in 2017.
Yeah.
And so I went down there. Actually, the crazy story is nobody knows. I haven't talked about this yet. I almost didn't go.
Oh, really?
Because they did a mix-up on scheduling, and the guy that I was working with, he booked me for the wrong week. So I was like, no, I've already taken off podcasts and rescheduled everything. Like, I'm going.
Yeah.
And so my friend Christian, who's the lead breathwork facilitator there, I happened to be in a men's group with him for 4 years.
Oh, wow.
So I called him, and I'm like, hey, can you just get me in this week? I already got it off. And he's like, just come. I talked to the founder, just come.
Nice.
So I ended up going. I had a massive breakthrough, like incredible healing. And on one of the nights of the ceremony, I met a guy named Jamal.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Jamal is
We know
like,
Jamal.
Oh, you do know Jamal?
We know Jamal. Yeah.
DJ?
DJ.
Yeah.
Jedi.
Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah.
You know
I'm
Jedi?
like,
Yeah.
Jamal,
I'm going to
DJ,
send
Jedi.
him this podcast.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
All right, Jedi, we love you.
We love you, yeah.
So he's like, you need to meet the co-founder's wife, the founder's wife. And I was like, okay, cool. He's like, I think you could help them. And I was like, all right, great. So I touched base with her later, and I was like, hey, I'd love to introduce you to a couple friends that I think would be really good fits to Rhythmia. And that led into Wellness Force partnering with Rhythmia, where we actually help more influencers go down there so that people like Adam and Vanessa Lambert can go through their healing, showcase it. And really what this is it unlocks permission in people that follow you guys or that follow any influencer that goes down there to let themselves heal, to let themselves go towards the solution.
Totally.
And that's why I've stuck with Rhythmia for this time, because they're so aligned with what I'm doing with Wellness Force. I mean, truthfully, honestly, sometimes uncomfortably, I'm sharing what I'm discovering about physical and emotional intelligence. Like when we had you on the podcast, like the questions are always around, what are we doing? Why are we doing it? And how does this actually help people? Like, does this really matter?
Is this working?
For our own growth and for spreading love and connection with others? So our messages really blend, you know, because rhythmia is about getting this healing out of the control of pharmaceuticals.
Yeah.
Like we're in an epi-fucking-demic. Is that a word?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, I think, dude,
it literally
has
just
been.
landed.
Yeah.
So they're offering a new path and a new solution. We live in an awesome time. We have our challenges, though.
Yeah.
There's definite challenges.
Yeah, I think we're living in a golden era, honestly. And I think it's funny, when we were at Rhythmia, Jerry does his talk, and he talks about actually the statistics in the world that really make you realize how well things are going.
Yeah.
He points to stats of, you know, how the average lifespan is longer and how most men won't die in a war. And, you know, most people are not in a famine, although we are in the opposite of that in America. But like, he points to all these statistics, and several of the people in the class were really surprised. They're like, wow, I have this opinion that the planet is in like the worst condition ever.
Yes.
And obviously you're right. We have our challenges, global warming being one of them, and like what we're going to do to
Pretty damn big one.
Yeah, and it's a huge one. But well, I mean, I don't worry as much about the globe or about the Earth as I do about the people who live there.
Whether we can still
Let
live
me be
there.
What happens to us
specific.
when we get sick? Our temperature rises.
Right, right.
Yeah, totally.
So,
You kill off all the bugs.
Yep, exactly. All the bugs.
We
and we're
may
the bugs.
be the bugs.
But it was interesting because I think a lot of people have an opinion that like what's happening on planet Earth right now is really bad. And actually, statistically, in so many ways, it's really amazing. But I do think coming into this technology, this huge technology dilemma that we're going to come into with AI.
And with 5G.
Yes, with all of the things that are happening with technology. That, I mean, global warming is a huge problem, but for humans specifically, AI is probably the biggest concern in terms of like our longevity, like for real, how we're going to survive this whole thing. So my point is, I think right now we're in this really amazing sweet spot of like having all this really awesomeness from technology, also having all of this awesomeness from more wealth and abundance and, you know, people waking up and all of the stuff. And so I think if you're alive right now, you should recognize.
Do you know what gives me the most intelligent hope? If you would have said 100 years ago, like said a conversation to somebody driving a horse and buggy, that we would be doing this, not only could they not fathom it, they wouldn't ever see it as a possibility. Ever. So what gives me intelligent hope is the solutions, and even the people that are going to create the solutions, they haven't even been born yet.
Yeah, totally.
Like in our lifetimes, the kids that are being born right now are going to be the ones that develop cold fusion power that burns clean water when we're done. Things like this.
Yeah, totally.
So that's the thing that even though I don't have the evidence of it being here right now, I can conceptualize that and I can feel that as a possibility. And I think if we all feel that as a possibility, it becomes more true.
Yeah, I agree.
Because what is truth anyways?
Yeah.
It's just something we agree upon.
Totally.
So that gives me intelligent hope.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Yeah, we just got to keep that generation of people that are going to solve these problems from getting diabetes when they're 8.
Yes.
You've got to make it to at least 25 where that whole brain's working.
I feel like for the younger generation, it's video games.
Yeah.
I don't know what the percentages are, but it's infiltrated.
Oh yeah.
Like my nephew's 15.
Oh
he's
yeah.
always on a video game.
Oh totally.
24/7.
Yeah.
It's pretty crazy.
And then sedentary, wrong kind of food. It's just like a cocktail for disease.
It totally is.
Well, it's WALL-E, that movie. Remember the Pixar movie WALL-E that was about the little robot that cleaned up all the garbage on Earth, and all the humans were circling in a spaceship, and they're like, their bone density went to crap because they just floated around and drank Slurpees. It was like, oh my god, this is exactly what's happening.
It's a cool movie.
Yeah.
So talk a little bit more about some of the, I don't know, the breakthroughs that you've had with plant medicine, because I know we talked last time you went, you called me actually right before you went, which was really beautiful. And you had some pretty amazing breakthroughs while you were there. So just share whatever feels comfortable about what's come up for you recently.
I can share it all. It all feels comfortable now.
Yeah,
because I've had the time go by to process it and take action from it. But this is one thing that I'll say before I share is like, people get to understand that just because you do the plant medicine doesn't mean you'll have a breakthrough that night or even that week.
Yeah.
Sometimes the breakthrough comes months later.
Of course.
And so this past year, like one of my fears was I had gotten this incredible opportunity to go out there with my friend Jay Brown and Beyonce's tour manager.
Oh,
and
wow.
I was like, okay, I'm
going to do that.
I'm going to drink plant medicine with these intelligent people.
Yeah.
So when I went out there, what I called you about is I was so nervous because the last time it had kicked my ass so hard.
Yeah.
And I had gotten incredible healing that I'll talk about, but I was honestly just needing a friend who had been to see grandmother enough that I could just trust that everything would be okay. So in a way, you, without even knowing it, or maybe you did know it, you gave me the peace and the confidence to go into this ceremony and just trust myself, because all I have to do is breathe and I'm fine.
Oh, yeah.
You know, like that's why it's tattooed on my arm. So
Yeah.
if I can breathe, I can choose.
Yeah.
If I'm not breathing, that's when everything unravels. So it was
Beautiful.
really special to talk to you before I went out there, because I knew the kind of work that you were creating and cultivating, and it just felt right. So it's cool to have
it felt
friends
right.
like
And
you.
actually, it's funny because you asked me a question, and I remember my answer was you already know.
Exactly.
You already know the answer. I was like, it's great. I mean, I could tell it. I can repeat
Yeah.
it back to you, but you already know.
I think I was just scared of seeing like maybe the deep down darkest thing, which that's, you know, Joseph Campbell, the cave we fear to enter holds the treasure that we seek.
Yes, totally.
So I there's no way around it.
Nope.
We have to go through the tar to get to the sunshine.
And I always love to like make a note on this, is that nothing is harder or worse, quote unquote worse, if that's the right word, than the pain you're already holding on to.
Amen.
You know, like it's there's nothing, you're not going to find anything out that's scarier than what's already hurting you every single day. It may come to light and you may have to like look at it, but trust me, that moment of like intense pain with it is so much less than the day-to-day trauma that you are, you know, holding around in your soul every single day.
Yeah. The way that I could explain it is, if something's a low level drip of stress, it's like walking around with an IV of pain all day long.
Yes.
Instead of just going through the entire bag
Rip
in a
the
second.
Band-Aid off. Yeah,
So
totally.
it's a shorter pain duration with higher intensity.
Yeah.
And so I think I understand why people are scared of it. And look, this medicine deserves incredible respect.
Of course.
Incredible
Of
respect.
course,
Like
yeah.
more respect than almost anything in the world. So my first year I went out there, I had a massive healing on my mom. And there was this moment where it was, I think it was on the third or fourth night, and I had this all of a sudden visualization of her holding me as a mother. I'm this little fetus. I'm looking at my mother through my baby's eyes, and I'm seeing like, you know, just how sad she was, and like dealing with emotional health and like mental issues, and my dad not being there, and her raising two young boys. Like I just felt her heart, and I was seeing her out of my eyes, and she was crying in this moment. And the thing that made it really real is that I looked on her dresser, and when I was young, I'd forgotten about this. I carved into her dresser, "Love one another," when I was a little kid. And I remembered it then when I saw it. But I'd forgotten about that for 20 years, 20 plus years.
Wow.
So that's when I knew it was real. And then I was like, whoa, this is actually happening right now. There's some cleaning going on here.
Yeah.
And I think I had always been holding on to, even though I said I did my work, even though I went to Landmark and I did MITT and I did my stuff. Really, honestly though, my shit was still in there. My resentment towards God of letting my mom have a mental illness, my resentment towards my mom of having a mental illness, it was all still in there, my friends. It was all still there.
Yeah.
So ayahuasca showed me, not through me having to release the pain, that it was going to heal me, but by feeling her pain, that's how I was going to get healed. And by letting go of like, oh, this woman like so did the best she could.
Of course she
like
did.
So, and our parents were always doing the best they could.
They always are.
Always, even if it's not enough.
Yep. It is the
Still
best
doing their
they
very
can
best.
do.
So this gift of forgiveness that we hear about in personal development, like it's one thing to gather it and to read it in a book. It's another thing to throw it up in a ceremony and look at
Leave
my
it in a bucket.
resentment in a bucket and say, wow, I am so sorry. Like I even feel it right now. Not a guilt sorry, but like a tender heart of, I really love you and I understand what you went through now. And of course you did the best you could.
Of course.
And so that forgiveness melts the anger because we put ourselves in the other human being's shoes. I think we forget a lot that our parents are still human. They're still human beings.
We
with
make
their
them
own
gods.
story and their broken lessons from their parents. You know? So that was the first healing.
Yeah, amazing.
There was a second healing, but I don't know how much you guys want to go.
It's all up to you, brother. It's up to you. Well, you know, I want to ask really quick about your mom though. Where is she now? And have you had a chance to talk about this with her? Okay.
Well, I talked to her in the way that I could because her upbringing was Catholic.
Okay.
So having a conversation that I talked to a divine mother in a ceremony and then threw up resentment.
Sure.
It wasn't really going to fly.
It wasn't going to land quite.
But I think she felt my heart. Like energy doesn't lie, you know? So like, the energy of when I said, hey, I just want to apologize to you for being so hard on you and like judging you. And I, you know what I said to her that made her kind of cry when I got back? I said, I didn't realize how hard it was for you to raise James and I without a husband. I didn't realize like how hard that was.
Of course.
And you did, and I said, you did such a good job.
Aw, and she did, obviously.
And she did.
Look at
She
you.
did a
I mean,
beautiful job.
yeah.
So it was like, oh, we get stabbed and kind of cut with this adversity, and then if we're doing our work, we really just like bleed out gratitude.
Yeah.
You know, and so I bled out gratitude for her, and that was the real healing. And so now when I talk to my mom, like there's just not a charge.
Yeah.
You know, there's an empathetic connection, and I know, like Bob Proctor says, you know, when people trigger you, send them love and don't go as often and don't stay as long.
Yeah.
So that's what I do with my parents, with my dad and my mom.
Right.
And I think that's healthy.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, actually, I'm glad you said that because that kind of tees into my next question, and I'm not going to forget about the next the next big one
After we talked?
yeah. But I'm curious how you do deal, like, you know, because in life, especially as you're doing work, you do start to feel that your energy shifts and that it's not necessarily that your tolerance goes down for certain types of behaviors, but you just don't want to spend as much time in it. Like you don't want to be there when you work so hard on yourself and you've cultivated so much and you really want to share what you can with people who want to, you know, receive and to be in that experience. You start to have, you know, this little bit of like, I just don't want to spend as much energy on the things that aren't in that vibration. Yeah. But I'm curious because you mentioned Landmark. How do you balance that with like the everybody gets transformed and brought along kind of mentality? And for folks out there who don't know about Landmark, one of the big things is kind of is always about bringing people along, being complete with people. So always trying to transform the situation with someone to be complete and to make it the highest vibration it can be. And so, so I'm just curious, like how you kind of connect those two dots.
Yeah, like you never write anybody off.
Right, like you never write anybody off, you know? And so I struggle with this sometimes because it's like, I want to bring everyone along. Like, oh my God, if anything, I want you to transform.
It's like Oprah. Everyone gets a laptop. Everyone's going to get healed.
Yep, everybody gets a healing.
Amen. But, you know, I've come to the conclusion that like, there's some blocks that you've got to like be okay with what it is. And then you find that people often, they miss you trying to transform them, right? Like they kind of like want to pull, like, why aren't you trying to fix me? You know, like
that was our dynamic.
And you're kind of like, oh no, it's fine. It's all good. But there's a lacking there.
There's two things. The first one is that if you listen to Alan Watts or you just look at like most philosophers, they talk about this concept of an energy vacuum. So nature hates a vacuum. Sodium, potassium in the body, gravity. If you have smoke in a car, all you have to do is crack the window a tiny bit and the smoke leaves because everything goes from high pressure to low.
Right.
So when it comes to us being more empathetic or people that are healers or people that hold space really strongly for others, the demand can be so strong for them that they can do what Gretchen Rubin calls obliger rebellion, where they're holding space and they're obliging people so much that one day they just wake up and say, well, fuck everyone.
No more.
All I've been doing is holding space. Like, give this motherfucker a break. So I think the way that I've managed that is, for me, like I get like a hot feeling in my solar plexus when I'm cooked. Like when I've held enough space, when I don't have any more patience, like my spirit animal's a bear. So if you poke a bear enough, eventually you're going to get swiped.
Right.
I'm like really slow to anger, but if you get me angry, I feel like I want to gouge your eyes out. So when I start feeling, and it's actually right here, like it's right below my ribs, and I'll feel it. And I'm like, okay, it's time to go for a walk. It's time to turn my phone off. It's time to go in nature for 3 days by myself, whatever it is. Because I don't want to sacrifice my ability to care for other people just because other people want to take my care.
Right.
I don't want to stop caring or stop serving. It's my job to take loving responsibility to create healthy structures of boundaries in my life. That's my work. It's not my mom's fault or my friend's fault or my girlfriend's fault. It's nobody's fault that I'm overwhelmed besides me.
Right.
Because I'm the one that directs how much of my energy they take in the first place. So that's for me like a body cue. It's like a somatic cue where I'm like, okay, I'm cooked right now. Like, let me stop this. Let me turn everything off. And if I'm being really intuitive enough, I'll feel it before it gets to that point. So that's how I balance the two. And then I'll just be honest in that moment and I'll say, listen, I know you really need me right now, or I know that this is really important to you, and I see you, and I want to be there for you.
Yeah.
Personally, I'm feeling really cooked, or I'm dealing with a little bit of stress. Would it be, and then I ask for permission. Would it be okay if we come back to this at this time?
Yeah.
Instead of like, I don't want to help you.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it's like
I'm out.
asking somebody else for permission in the same way that I ask them for permission if we can connect on that later is the same thing as if I ask somebody for permission if I can tell them how I'm feeling instead of just vomiting on someone my emotions.
Right.
So that's the guidepost that I use.
Yeah.
I love it. Yeah.
It's
And it's easy to do it right
good.
now. It's different when you're
yeah.
charged in the moment.
Sure.
But
Yeah,
I
totally.
have the archetype. I have the frame of how to do it.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about, because that reality of, I think that the clinical term is compassion fatigue, right? Like you get to a point where you're like, I literally can't care anymore.
Yeah.
I just can't. And
All my fucks have been given.
they've all been
Fuck
given.
bank is empty.
It's empty, yeah.
Yeah.
And so this was something that I used to see a lot, when I was working for the fire department, and to some degree with the firemen themselves, but mostly with the ambulance folks, because they just get their asses handed to them nonstop.
That lifestyle, man.
And it's like you see people behaving in a way towards people that you're like, there is no way. They're almost like internet trolls. You know what I mean? Like you would not talk to this person this way, but they're so shot.
Yeah.
And they've been taking it and taking it and taking it and taking it. And, and the desire is there. They're in that job because they want to help people, and they're just incapable of just being cool and dealing with it, and it's like, finally I get to go home tomorrow, and then somebody calls in sick and they're back on shift again, and it's right back into the whole mix,
I can feel the intensity of that right now. I'm like,
yeah, but it's like a real thing, and I think it exists in in-home healthcare providers. I mean, anybody who's in a role that they can't do what you just described and say, hey, you know what?
Let me take a break. Yeah.
Is it okay if I come back to your heart attack?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because like I need a me moment, it's like to square this shit away.
I'm feeling a little overwhelmed.
And it's like, it's so like it's a trip to think about now that I'm, a year plus removed from that environment, like just how present that need to, or that, well, it's like an internal drive to serve, which is why they're in that job.
Yeah.
But then the only way, without, and I wish there was a toolkit, I guess, that you could give people for this. That's just like, look, when this starts to get close, and I think you really nailed it with the where you're getting to, where you can feel it coming on, right? You can feel before it's there.
Yeah.
And like if we could just teach people that, so that they can hit the pressure release valve before it hits itself, what a different environment, folks would live in, like in a lot of ways,
You know who wrote a fascinating book on this is Lissa Rankin. You familiar with her work?
Actually, I've seen her. Did she do a TED Talk?
I believe she did.
Yeah, I think I've seen a TED Talk.
But she talked about, I think her book is called The Anatomy of a Desire or The Anatomy of a Dream. So she was a physician, and she was dealing with what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Where she'd be like delivering babies. And this is what happens in the medical industry. These physicians come in, and they just get slammed.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they're working like multiple shifts with like 2-hour sleep breaks, and they're holding babies and people's lives in their hands. It's utterly fascinating to me how the medical industry even survives.
Yeah.
And she talked about this in her book, where she just left it all behind because she was having a sensation in her body, and she couldn't ignore it anymore. And that sensation for all of us manifests in fat on the body, or sickness or disease, or even injury. Like the body's screaming all the time.
Yeah.
So it'll get our attention when we least expect it if we're ignoring it for too long.
Absolutely.
So now I'm really in the place where, like, I'm 39. Like, I get to be really kind to myself.
Yeah.
And so if I feel that signal come up, it's like, pay attention. Like, pay the fuck attention.
Yeah,
Way
totally.
more than in my 20s. In my 20s, I'd just be like, I'll just drink another Red Bull.
It'll be fine.
I'm sure Red Bull will fix this.
I know, little can of fear will just stamp all this shit down. Yeah.
Caffeine will solve everything.
All right, so circling back.
Okay.
Coming back around.
I thought you were going to forget about that.
I mean, actually, if you want to talk about okay.
It's cool. It's cool because I know that my story, like, I believe we are unique snowflakes, but we all come from the same water.
Yeah.
So my story is just a mirror of someone else's story. So when I share, I'm just talking to whatever someone else is going through.
Of course.
It's not a focus on my story. It's just an example.
Yeah.
The second the second year arrhythmia that on the first night, even though it was an entire year later, was literally a continuation of the fourth night. I mean, it took me right back.
Wow.
It was as if no year had passed whatsoever. I was the only one purging and crying and getting, and the first night's like a gentle medicine.
Right.
So I was purging and crying, and I was feeling sadness, and immediately ayahuasca was like, "What's going on with your father?" Like right away. I mean, we're like an hour in the ceremony, and so I fought it. Like I fought it for a couple of nights because I knew something was there. I was like scared of it for some reason, which I know now why. On the third night of ceremony, I saw this vision when I was 17. My dad found condoms in my dryer. And up until that time, like I had only lived with my father for 4 years in high school because we lived with my mom, single mom, for the majority of my childhood. And so when my mom had trouble and issues, we went to go live with my dad. And it was really hard for me as a teenager to just have conversations with my father. Because it was hard for my father to have conversations with his father. It just didn't exist. The emotional intelligence didn't exist. So when my dad held up the condoms, I was like, I froze. I went into like fight or flight.
Of course.
And I was like, oh, they're my brothers. I didn't know what to say. So that night I get a call from, I get a page. Remember pagers?
Yeah.
I had a pager. We pulled over next to a gas station and I called the pager and it was my girlfriend's mom. I was 17. She was 15. And she says, hey, your father just called and he said you're having sex with my daughter.
Oh, snap.
And it was like someone had put the Excalibur sword in my stomach. Like I felt stabbed. And I was so deeply hurt because it's like, how could you do that? You know? And so I went back. We had this huge fight. I ended up moving out shortly after, and my life was just going down this crazy this path. And ayahuasca showed me that in that moment, I had made a subconscious decision that I would hide sex. Sex is something you should hide. And I could never trust authority figures. And I'll show you, Dad, I'll do everything in my life without your help at all, and I don't need anyone because people can't be trusted.
Right.
And I made that contract with my subconscious because it hurt so deeply to be betrayed.
Of course, yeah.
And I just started crying. Like I was by myself at 3 a.m. Everyone else had gone. I went up for like a third cup because I knew something was in there. And when I started to cry, I must have cried for like 20 minutes. And it was like a deep belly cry because I saw how all these things had connected where I had been holding on to resentment and anger towards him from 17 to 38.
Yeah.
It's a long time.
Yeah.
It's a lot to
And not
carry.
only did I feel like the resentment and the just exhaustion from holding on to the resentment, but I also then on top of that felt shame for holding on to it for so long.
Yeah.
And this is what most people do. It's a double whammy. They feel bad and then they feel bad for feeling bad.
Right.
So as I was throwing up, I just kept saying, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Because I realized like, this is a guy that did not have any kind of tools to communicate his heart or to meet with his son and have a father-son moment. Like it didn't exist for him.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that, but I just made this deal. So ayahuasca gave me this seriously beautiful purge where as I was throwing up, I felt like I was a gargoyle. I mean, the throw up was coming from my toes, like through my back, it was like pouring into this bucket. And I threw up and there was a guy there named Merrill. I don't know if you met Merrill. And he told me the next day, he said, when you purged and you cried, he's like, there was a dark entity that left your body. And as it exited the room, it said, thank you.
Oh, wait, tall, skinny guy that's like a facilitator? Yeah.
And it felt like that. And so as the sun was coming up, because we always share in the mornings, right? The sun's coming up. I tell the entire story to the group, and I promised them that I would have my dad on my podcast, and that I would apologize to him, and that I would like connect with him the best way that I could.
Yeah.
And I felt it in that moment. When I got home, it was like, no way am I doing that. No way am I doing that. 2 months go by. And I'm feeling just this tension, and I'm like, I really need to do this.
Yeah.
Like I have to get this done. So I go to nature for 3 days. I sit on the third day in nature. I just sit below this huge oak tree, and I was like, I'm not getting up until I figure out like how I can do this. And I just kept breathing and sitting there. And at one point I just started laughing, and I was like, it's easy. You just tell somebody that you're hurting. And when you start a conversation saying that you're hurting, it takes the power away from them because I was the one going to the person. I was apologizing. I was taking ownership. I was the one who was expressing my hurt. And that's how the conversation went. I drove home. I called him immediately. I'm like, listen, I have to talk to you about something. And I really request that you just let me go for about 10 minutes and just be with me. And he was like, okay, what's going on?
Yeah, of course.
So I get on the phone with him, and I'm like, things that happened in my life I've become aware of recently. And I've done some healing work around it. I haven't really told him about the plant medicine because that might scare him off.
Right.
And I went down and I told him the whole story. And I went for about 15 minutes. And at one point he said, you know what, Josh? I could have handled that a lot differently.
Yeah.
And when he said that, it was like something clicked and then like liquid fell in my body somewhere. And I was like, oh, this is so beautiful. Like now I know how to use the right type of language to really be vulnerable. And that vulnerability is power. Because if I would have wanted an apology from him, or if I would have gone to him and said, how could you have done this to me, blah, blah, blah.
Sure.
That's confrontation.
Yeah.
But when I go in with the sole purpose of me forgiving and healing, and I lead the conversation like that, that's it. That's how I did it.
Aww.
And so then we ended up talking for like 45 minutes. It was one of the coolest conversations we ever had. Yeah, and that was the healing.
That is amazing.
That was the healing.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And are your parents close to you, like logistically? In location?
My dad has a home in Oregon, and my mom has a place in Center San Diego.
Okay.
So my mom's pretty close with my dad. My dad has a place in Vegas, and he spends time in Vegas and Oregon.
Okay, but you don't see him as much. But
no, and it's funny because I was asked this question where somebody was like, "Well, are you guys close now?" And I said, "Well, we're as close as he'll allow me to be."
Yeah.
And I don't need to push that because
Of course.
just because I'm doing work and I want a certain type of connection.
Yeah.
And I've even seen this now in my current relationship. Just because I want something doesn't mean that's exactly what the other person wants.
Yeah.
And really my work and all of our work is to just love them anyways.
Yes.
Just love them anyways.
Of course.
Yeah.
You know, because it's the expectation of how I want them to be that fucks up our dynamic.
Yeah.
That's the
totally.
thing that perpetuates the...
Yeah. You're not doing you correctly.
Yeah.
My version of you is totally different.
When I give you something, I want you to respond like this.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Let me lay this
That's
out
not
for
how
you.
it works, dude.
Let's try end scene. Let's try this again.
That's not real life, you know?
So what are you most excited about right now in life? Like you're up to so much awesome stuff, but like tell us what you're most excited about.
I'm most excited about continuing the dream of growing Wellness Force Media, doing this amazing partnership with Rhythmia, and having a wonderful, powerful relationship, and having a healthy body. Those three things.
Yeah,
Right.
This is the triangle we all walk, right? It's health, wealth, relationships.
Yeah. Yep.
So I'm most excited about growing those continually without any one of them suffering.
Yeah.
And I'm really excited about how I get to do that. Like, I guess there's just curiosity about how I'm going to do it, which I'm excited about.
Yeah.
Yeah, because, I mean, look, bad things are going to happen and tragedy happens and life can be rough, and that's true. It just doesn't mean that I have to focus on that or that I have to be afraid of the bad stuff happening.
Yeah.
I've been doing like a lot of imagination lately where I'm like journaling and I'm just sitting and like consciously imagining my house and imagining my children and imagining what I'm going to have. And that's been really fun.
Yeah.
So I'm doing that more now than ever.
Yeah, that's cool. Actually, and I want to touch on this because I feel like there's so many different areas that we could like do a whole podcast on.
I know.
But I do want to touch on some of the things that you do to support your business and to stay organized and to stay really charged up about it and like really intent on what you're creating. And so I'm curious, like, do you use a schedule? Like, what kind of schedule do you use?
Yeah.
Do you use an online? Do you use one in paper? Do you use both? Like I do. That's my favorite.
You know what's so funny? And and this in no way is a judgment. I find that most women do digital and analog.
Yeah.
I don't know what that is. They like the paper.
There's something, they talk about this. I watched a TED Talk about something about writing actually helps to communicate to the brain a little more than just having it on a software program. And so I don't know if that's part of it. Maybe the way that our brains work or the way that we're wired, we can understand it or something locks in a little bit deeper by writing it out. But there is something about that where I just I do everything in Asana and we schedule all of our tasks there. But then week on week, I have to write it all out so I can see it, you know? Yeah, I'm not sure.
Well, it works. I think whatever works is kind of the magic.
Exactly, yeah.
You know what works for me, and this is my number one thing. If people did this, we would be so productive. Immediately when I schedule something with someone, even when I'm on the phone.
Yeah.
I mean, this is in our calendar that I'm here today on a Saturday, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Everything I do is in a calendar.
Yeah.
And people, like some of my
I
friends
agree.
are like, oh my God.
How could it not
You
be?
have to schedule your life in a calendar? Like,
Yeah.
what's your deal? And I'm like, you don't understand. Like, the discipline of the calendar is freedom.
I
for
totally
sure.
agree.
The discipline of the calendar is freedom.
Yes.
The discipline of not having to decide if I'm going to go to the gym is freedom.
Yeah.
It's like, no, I'm just going.
Yeah, it's on the calendar.
This is-
Just go.
This is
I'm
what's
just going
happening.
to go because that's what I do.
I think people also get it confused that by everything being scheduled, that means that everything in your calendar sucks, and that's not true.
No.
Yeah, you can put good stuff in there.
play
Yeah.
meditation.
Make out with Vanessa.
Yeah,
Right,
exactly.
right. You're like, well, babe, it's noon 30. It's in the
It's
schedule.
makeout time.
Yeah.
That's right. No, but that's my number one. I use my calendar on my phone the most. It's been a life changer.
Yeah.
That's the number one thing.
I agree.
And even like go to the mailbox
Yep.
or like email John or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because here's the thing, you talked about compassion fatigue. There's decision fatigue.
Oh, for sure.
100%.
Decision fatigue is real.
For
Yeah.
sure,
Our
yeah.
brain can only handle, I think Brendan Burchard said, 150 like high tension decisions every day.
Right.
So this is why Steve Jobs wore the same thing.
Yeah.
all the
Right.
time.
Done.
It's why I have like 6 of the same board shorts because
Yep.
I just
Yeah.
like them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Easy.
So
yeah.
if I don't use the schedule and if I have to make so many minute fractional decisions all the time, when it comes to me making a big decision, I might not be at full bandwidth.
For sure.
So by me not using a calendar and trying to quote remember everything, I'm doing a disservice to the things that matter the most.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So the other thing I want to say about that is that it also gets you really clear on how much you can really fit into your life. Because if you're a chronic task piler oner like I am, I'm like, oh, let's open this business and that business and that business and let's do all of this stuff. It actually helps you structure out and see like, what is it actually possible for me to handle in
Right.
any given time, so that you're setting yourself up for success instead of failure. Because if you have all these tasks and all these things you think you're going to get to and then you don't get to them, that's a fail. Whereas if you set it up and you can see, oh, I can actually accomplish this in a week's time, then you're in the win. And then all of that energy feeds on itself to feel like, oh yeah, I know how to like run my life, and like Aubrey Marcus would say, own the day. Like I know how to do my thing. Yeah.
Yep. And guaranteed he uses a calendar.
Yeah.
I know because there's been a podcast with an episode on the calendar.
Yes.
So I know.
Yes.
I don't know anyone who's created anything that really serves a large amount of people that doesn't use a calendar for almost everything they do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't
agree.
know anyone that doesn't do it.
I agree.
Me either.
I agree.
It's like one of the first primary shifts, in the business. Like once things started to get a little bit crazy, a couple of our like entrepreneur friends were like, have you read Getting Things Done or GTD or whatever, that book that's just like, can't remember who the author is.
Which says use
no.
a calendar.
Basically, yes. And that was like the premise. It's an entire book. It's like you need to figure out what your system is, and you have to use that system for everything. And if you do that, then it's absolute freedom. And it's like, sure enough, Asana has changed our entire game.
Whole flow. Yeah.
Yeah,
Awesome.
it makes a big difference.
Yeah, totally. So, a couple other quick, like, sort of more technical details. What about your morning routine? What does that look like?
Okay, so I have what I consider to be the most powerful morning routine out there. And I know everybody says that.
Yeah.
Right.
But I really believe it because,
Okay.
300 people that I've interviewed, actually more if you think about another podcast I did that I didn't even talk about. I took 3 months, actually 2 or 3 months, a big span of time early this year. And I was like, all right, let me create something that's really distilled for people. And I connected the dots of all the things that most people say, and it came down to 6 things. And I created a guide. It's the M21 guide. It's our main guide that thousands of people have downloaded. And so what it is you start by making your bed. And I know this sounds way too simple. It's like, what do you mean make my bed? There's a Navy admiral that has a talk on Goalcast that has like 30 million views. And what they found in the military and just with life in general, when you start the day by doing something and completing it within the first like minute or two of you being awake, it sets a cue in your brain to be able to complete things later.
Right.
It's almost like a primer for other tasks' success.
Yeah.
So make your bed.
Yeah.
That's it.
Super simple.
You want a good morning routine? Make your bed first thing in the morning.
Yeah.
That's number one. And then the next thing is hydrate, sea salt, lime, water. Because as you guys know, we're respirating. And so we're like off-gassing water. water. Most people are like tacky mouth when they wake up.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I wake up, I'm like thirsty.
Yeah, me too.
Get me some water immediately.
Yep.
Most people just go right to coffee.
Yeah.
And don't do any water, which is diuretic, right?
Right, yeah.
So do that, and then go to the breath. The next thing for me is going to the breath. I do breath work right away. I'm hydrated. I went to the bathroom. I do breath work. After the breath work, then I do my journaling. I do my movement, and I really set the tone for the day. And I keep it super simple with the journal. I just go, okay, if nothing else happened today and I only did 3 things for the entire day, and I'd be really stoked, I'd be really happy with my day, what are those 3 things?
Right.
And I start with those 3.
Nice.
And that's it.
Nice.
Because it's one day at a time, you know?
Yeah.
And then I write 3 things I'm grateful for. And then I ask this question, which is really cool. I think you guys will dig this, especially because I'm in your house and you're kind of like dreamers. I think you have big dreams.
Yeah.
And there's cool artwork
As you're
everywhere.
staring at the dream catcher.
Yeah, and then the towel in your bathroom.
Yeah. Yes.
The question I ask is, who do I get to be today? Question mark. Because, you know, when we were kids and we were playing, we'd be like, I'm going to be an astronaut.
Yeah.
I'm going to be a firefighter.
Yeah.
I'm going to do whatever I'm going to do. I asked myself that question. And it's on my phone. Who do I get to be today?
Yeah.
Not who am I becoming?
Right.
What is
Yeah.
my authentic self guiding me towards? No,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
like, that's my last question that I write for the day is who do I get to be?
Yeah.
And actually for the past week or so, I've just been writing, I just get to be happy Josh Trent.
Beautiful.
Perfect.
Love
Yeah,
it.
so I simplify it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there is some visualization in there as well. But those are the 6 things that I think make the most. I do a womb squat as well. I didn't talk about the movement. A womb squat with a reach.
Oh, yeah.
Because that opens up the hips. It gets the thoracic spine moving. And
Oh, yeah.
I love doing that.
Sounds
Yeah.
yummy. We should get off and do this right now.
Yeah.
Do a womb squat when we're done.
We
Womb
should
squat.
definitely womb squat after this. So tell folks, if they don't know where to find you, what you're up to next, all that good stuff.
Yeah, search Wellness Force on Google. You could even type in Vanessa Lambert.
Oh,
Wellness
yeah.
Force, and your episode would come up.
Oh, yeah.
And also, you know, I'm really focused on engaging on Instagram lately. I feel like we're meeting people where they are.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Unfortunately or fortunately, however you want to describe it.
Yeah.
Most people are scrolling on Instagram or Facebook. Right
Oh,
now.
of
Yeah.
course. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm really active on Instagram and Facebook because I want to meet people where they are. And I'm really excited about up-leveling my media game. You know, creating the coolest content.
Yeah.
clips
Yeah.
that can be shared. I want to do conscious clickbait.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
I want because
We talked about that. Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
a lot
Yeah.
of clickbait that just gets people to like watch a video so they can get a fraction of a penny on ads.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's like it's killing people.
Yeah.
You know? It's like the most unhealthy things to go into the mind. And I'll say this last thing. I'm really focused on just sharing the most I possibly can from a place of truth. That's
Yeah.
it. That's my number one thing. It's like no matter what happens, no matter how many downloads I get on the show or where this thing goes, I know that if I just be honest about everything, then it's going to do what it's going to do anyways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The only way that I get in front of progress is if I'm not being honest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm most excited about.
Yeah. That's
Beautiful. Love it. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah.
This has been awesome, you guys.
Yeah,
I love this studio.
This is so
Let's
fun.
do this again.
Isn't
Yeah,
it?
for
No, seriously, because, you know, there's something about like being in person and having a space and just downloading and like sharing, I don't know, story together is so powerful. So I love it.
You know what I think it is? And people ask me this, and I just got it from you. When we talk, I'm looking at your face and I'm seeing how your face reacts, and
Yeah.
we're watching how each other reacts. And I think that's the specialness of an in-person interview. is
Yes.
I can feel you.
Yeah.
I can see what's going on. Compared to Skype, if I can't see you, I don't really know how you're feeling.
Yeah.
Right.
No. Yeah. And it is so much more. You know, there's something really interesting when you're just getting auditory cues. Like you do drop in with people in a interesting way. I do find there's like something interesting that happens there. But I think in person, looking at each other, sharing story, drinking water, doing womb squats after, it's
All
just
the
as
things.
good as it gets.
Yeah.
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 All right, buddy. Thanks for being here, folks.
Thank you, guys.
If you haven't checked out Josh yet, please check out Wellness Force and Wellness Force Radio. He's up to amazing things. We have been thrilled to get to know you and to like have you bless us with our trip to Rhythmia and connecting us with them. And that whole thing has been such an amazing, you know, we've done plant medicine before, but having that experience was such a special experience. And we're bringing back like 20 something people this year. We have a whole posse.
Yes.
So we're so excited.
For the Graham Hancock week.
Yes, for
Yeah.
the Graham Hancock week, which is wait, before we leave, we leave, can I
Talk
tell you
about
this story?
that. Talk about that.
Okay, just I have to go there because when I initially booked, I'd talked to Hamid and I said, oh, can we come the Graham Hancock week? And he said, we try not to schedule groups because, it's Graham Hancock and so many people want to come that we prefer if you choose another week. And I was like, okay, cool. I totally respect that. No big deal. Props, And then we scheduled another week and they moved Graham Hancock to our week.
It was meant to be.
Yeah,
I was like,
gonna happen.
I manifested that. Yes.
Were you really wanting to go to see Graham?
Yeah, I wanted to.
Yeah.
I wanted to I was like, that would be really cool just to share energy with him and to share space and, just to I really think that there's something about just being in space with people and feeling their energy. And even if you don't have a major interaction or whatever, there's just something about energy that's contagious.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so I really wanted to experience that. And I was like, there you go.
Yeah, and for me, Graham Hancock's books and his just overall take on not throwing away, but certainly shaking up the snow globe when it comes to ideas about our past and the history of the human species and all of this stuff is so fascinating to me. I mean, I love that kind of shit.
Yeah.
And so I'm just like, all right, I just want a selfie.
Yeah.
I just want to hang out and get a selfie with Graham Hancock.
The healing work. I
just want a selfie. Let's be real.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just want a selfie.
And for me, it's never do I want a selfie.
It's
In fact,
true.
I want there to be less selfies, but I'm excited about getting one with Graham Hancock.
Yeah.
So hopefully we make that happen. Yeah.
Anyway, so yes, thank you for connecting us with them and in turn connecting our community and so much healing. And so you're on your mission. You are spreading the love.
You're doing it.
Yeah.
And we're all discovering together.
We are.
Aren't we?
We are.
Yeah, we're all doing this together. I hear like my buddy Drew Canoli, he's like, we're all in this together. And when he says it, I'm like, God, that's so true.
It is so true.
Yeah.
We're all doing this thing step by step.
Yeah.
We're all kind of walking each other home.
Yeah.
Literally.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good way to look
I
at
love
it.
that.
I mean, the thing that I think about sometimes is that there are people who don't think that. You know what I mean? And so the only other thing to think is that if we're not all in this together, then that means that you're in it by yourself. And what a shit way to go through life. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm like, well, it's just me. Damn it. I mean, I don't know. Maybe some people like this. I like a lot of solitude, but not that much. I don't like celestial solitude.
Yeah.
That's
That's such
crazy.
a solid point, man. And look what happened to me when I was 17. I was like, I'll do it by myself.
Yeah.
I'll do it alone.
Right.
The lone wolf syndrome is a real thing.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Which is a whole other podcast.
Yeah.
It probably is.
Part 2, the lone wolf coming to you soon.
We should do that though, because
Yeah.
I think it's a huge thing for people, and it's something that I've certainly experienced, and still I don't want to say I battle with it. Sometimes I just like to do stuff by myself, but it's definitely a thing. So that would be cool.
And I never let him do anything by himself. I'm like, nope, I'm coming with. All right, folks, we'll see you soon. Thanks for joining us. Bye.
And that's a wrap, folks. Hope you guys got a ton out of that podcast interview conversation with Josh. He's a cool dude. And if you didn't pick it up from this podcast, then make sure to go to the Facebook Live. You can go on our page and watch that, and you can see it in person, and then you'll be convinced for sure.
It will be the deal sealer.
The deal sealer.
And you know what else will be the deal sealer is if you make sure you leave us a 5-star review on iTunes or on whatever medium you're listening to this podcast.
Yeah, you can just write it on a letter and mail it.
Mail it.
Mail it to us. That would be cool.
Adam and Vanessa, Venice, California.
No, our address is on our website.
Yeah,
you could
it is.
actually do it. We don't accept faxes, though.
Oh, we don't.
We've moved on from fax machines.
We moved on since 1980.
Yeah.
All right, folks. Have a great rest of your week. We'll see you soon. Bye.